If you carry me up the stairs, I'll tell you a secret, said the sick little girl, her voice no louder than the ticking clock on the garage wall. The mechanic froze, one oil-stained hand still gripping the wrench. The request made no sense. The garage was cluttered, loud with the smell of metal and fuel, and the girl, thin as a shadow, stood at the foot of the narrow staircase that led to the unused apartment above. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes were too large for her face, holding a seriousness that didn't belong to someone her age. He wiped his hands on a rag and crouched so they were eye level. "You shouldn't be here," he said gently. "You need to go home." "I don't have one," she replied without blinking. "But you do. Upstairs." The mechanic felt something tighten in his chest. He had lived above the garage for years, yet no one ever went up there except him. The stairs were steep, their wooden edges worn down by time. He had never seen the girl before, yet she spoke as if she knew his life intimately, as if she had memorized its quiet corners. "And the secret?" he asked, half humouring her, half unsettled. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "It's about your brother." The wrench slipped from his hand and clanged against the concrete floor. His brother's name had not been spoken aloud in this garage for over a decade. He swallowed, suddenly aware of how loud his breathing had become. "How do you know about him?" His voice came out rough. She coughed, a dry, rattling sound that bent her small body forward. When she straightened again, she looked even smaller, as if the air itself was too heavy for her. "Carry me," she repeated. "I don't have the strength for the stairs." Every sensible thought told him to refuse. He didn't know this child. He didn't know where she came from or why she had chosen him. Yet something deeper, older than logic, pushed him forward. He slipped his arms beneath her knees and back. She weighed almost nothing, as if she were made of paper and breath. As he lifted her, she rested her head against his chest. Her heartbeat was fast and fragile, like a trapped bird. The staircase groaned under his boots. With each step, the air seemed to change, growing colder, thicker. The familiar smells of oil and rubber faded, replaced by the faint scent of dust and something else, something like old rain. "You used to carry him like this," the girl murmured. His grip tightened. "Who told you that?" "You did," she said softly. "A long time ago." The apartment door creaked open. He hadn't cleaned the place in weeks. Tools and old newspapers lay scattered across the floor. The curtains were half-drawn, letting in thin blades of afternoon light. He set the girl gently on the worn sofa. She looked around, her gaze lingering on a framed photograph on the wall. Two boys, arms slung around each other, grinning at the camera, grease smeared on their cheeks. "You blamed yourself," she said. He turned away sharply. "You don't know anything." "I know you fixed the brakes yourself," she continued, her voice calm, almost tender. "I know you told him not to drive so fast. I know you waited for the phone call." His knees weakened, and he sat heavily in the armchair opposite her. No one knew those details. Not the police, not the neighbors, not even the few friends who still visited him. "Who are you?" he whispered. She pressed a hand to her chest as another cough shook her. This one lasted longer, leaving her breathless. When it passed, she met his eyes again. "I'm someone who needs help," she said. "And I'm someone who came to remind you of something you forgot." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "If you're sick, I'll take you to a doctor. Right now." She shook her head slowly. "Not yet. First, the secret." The room seemed to grow quieter, as if the world outside had paused to listen. "He didn't blame you," she said. The words struck him harder than any accusation ever could. His throat burned. "You don't know that." "I do," she insisted. He knew the brakes would fail anyway. He knew the car was already dying. He drove because he wanted to see the ocean one last time. The mechanic stared at the floor, memories crashing into him, unfinished arguments, unspoken apologies, the echo of laughter that used to fill the garage. His hands trembled. "Why tell me this?" he asked. "Because guilt is heavy," the girl replied. "Heavier than me. And you've been carrying it for too long." She shifted on the sofa, wincing as pain crossed her face. He stood instinctively, reaching for a glass of water. When he turned back, she was watching him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. "There's more," she said. "But you won't like it." "I can handle it," he said, though his voice betrayed him. She shook her head again. "You think that. But when I tell you who I really am, and why I came here today, you'll understand why the stairs mattered, and why time doesn't have as much left as you believe. The mechanic sank back into the chair, the wood creaking beneath his weight. Then tell me, he said. I've already lost enough not to hear the rest. The girl studied him for a long moment, as if measuring something invisible. Outside, a car passed on the road below, its sound stretching and fading like a distant sigh. She drew her knees up slightly, wrapping her thin arms around them. You remember the night he left, she said. Not the accident, the night before. He nodded slowly. He remembered the argument, sharp and unfinished, the way his brother had stood in the doorway with keys in hand, sunlight behind him like a warning neither of them understood. You told him to stay, she continued. You said you'd finish fixing the car in the morning. And he laughed, the mechanic said bitterly. He always laughed when he didn't want to listen. He laughed because he was afraid, the girl replied. But not of the road. Her words stirred something uneasy in him. Afraid of what, then? She lifted her gaze to the ceiling, tracing the cracks with her eyes. Of staying. Of becoming stuck in the same place forever, convincing himself that waiting was the same as living. The mechanic closed his eyes. Those words felt uncomfortably close to home. The garage, the apartment, the same routine day after day, it had all felt like penance, a life paused at the moment of loss. You see, the girl said softly, he thought you were brave. He laughed once, a hollow sound. That's funny. It's true, she insisted. He admired how you stayed, how you took responsibility. But he also wished you'd forgive yourself enough to leave sometimes. The mechanic rubbed his face with his hands. When he looked up again, his eyes were wet. And you? He asked quietly. Where do you fit into all of this? She hesitated, her fingers twisting the fabric of her sleeve. I fit where promises are unfinished. A sudden chill ran through him. That doesn't answer my question. She met his gaze. Do you believe that people can come back for a moment if something important is left undone? The room felt smaller, the air pressing in. I don't know, he said honestly. I used to believe a lot of things. She smiled sadly. I didn't mean literally. Not always. Another coughing fit seized her, harsher than before. He rushed to her side, kneeling. Her skin felt cool beneath his hand. You're burning up, he said. We're going to the hospital. Secret or not. She caught his wrist with surprising strength. Listen to me first, she pleaded. I won't have long after this. The urgency in her voice froze him in place. I came because you still wake up at 3:17 every morning, she said. Because you still hear the phone ringing. Because part of you believes that if you suffer enough, it will balance the scales. His breath hitched. He had never told anyone about the time. Not once. You don't need to punish yourself anymore, she whispered. He never asked you to. Tears slid down his face, unchecked. Then why does it hurt so much? He asked. Why doesn't it stop? Because love doesn't vanish, she said gently. It changes shape. And when it has nowhere to go, it turns into pain. She released his wrist and leaned back against the sofa cushions, exhausted. The mechanic remained kneeling, his head bowed. After a moment, he spoke again. You said you'd tell me who you really are. She nodded faintly. I will. But not in the way you expect. He waited. I'm not your brother, she said, anticipating the thought. And I'm not a ghost, either. Then what are you? He asked. I'm a reminder, she replied. I come to people who are standing still when the world is asking them to move. I come in a form they won't ignore. He frowned. You're saying you chose to be a sick child. Her eyes softened. You would never have carried me if I weren't. The truth of that struck him hard. He imagined a stranger, healthy and whole, asking the same favor. He would have refused without a second thought. You needed to feel the weight, she continued. Not just of me, but of everything you've been holding inside. He swallowed. And the sickness. She glanced down at her chest. Some reminders don't last long. Fear surged through him. Then let me help you, he said urgently. Let me do something right for once. She looked at him with something like gratitude. You already are. He shook his head. That's not enough. Sometimes it has to be, she said. Because the help isn't for me. It's for you. Silence stretched between them. The light in the room shifted as clouds passed outside, dimming the afternoon. I want you to open the garage tomorrow, she said suddenly.
Really open it?
Not just to fix cars, but to teach.
Teach, he echoed.
You know more than you think, she said. There are boys in this town who don't have brothers anymore, who don't have anyone to show them how to fix what's broken. His mind filled with images, grease-stained hands not his own, laughter echoing again in the garage, mistakes made and corrected. And if I don't? He asked quietly. She met his eyes, and for the first time, he saw something ancient there. Then I'll still leave, she said. But you'll stay exactly where you are. Another wave of coughing shook her. He reached out instinctively, holding her shoulders as if anchoring her to the world. Promise me you'll think about it, she said weakly. I promise, he said, his voice breaking. I promise. She leaned back, breathing shallowly now, her eyelids fluttering.
Good, she murmured.
Because that's the secret I carried all this way.
He bent closer.
What secret? That forgiveness, she whispered, is heavier than guilt at first, but once you lift it, it changes everything. The words lingered between them, fragile and luminous, as if they might shatter if spoken aloud again. The mechanic stayed kneeling, afraid that if he moved, something irreversible would happen. The girl's breathing was uneven now, each rise of her chest a quiet effort. Stay with me, he said softly, though he wasn't sure who he was speaking to anymore. I am, she replied, her voice barely more than air. That's why I came. He reached for the thin blanket draped over the back of the sofa and laid it across her legs. His hands, so steady when tightening bolts and aligning engines, trembled as he tucked it in. The contrast unsettled him. How easily he could fix a machine, and how helpless he felt now. You're tired, he said. Close your eyes if you need to. She did, but only for a moment. When she opened them again, her gaze was sharp with urgency. There's something else you haven't asked. He searched her face. What? Why today? She said. Why now? A knot formed in his stomach. Why? Because today is the day you were going to sell the garage. His breath caught. The paperwork sat unsigned on the workbench downstairs, tucked beneath a stack of invoices. He hadn't told anyone. Not the realtor, not the neighbor who sometimes brought him soup. The decision had felt like another small burial, a way to erase the place where too many memories lived. I couldn't stay there anymore, he admitted. Every corner reminds me of him. She nodded slowly. And every corner is also proof that you loved him. He looked away, jaw tightening. Love isn't enough when it ends like that. It is, she said gently. It just doesn't feel like it. A long silence followed. The old refrigerator hummed in the kitchenette, its sound steady and indifferent. The mechanic stood and paced once across the room, then stopped at the window. Below, the garage door was half open, sunlight spilling across the concrete floor like a promise he didn't know how to keep. You said you're a reminder, he said without turning. Who sent you? No one, she replied. Or everyone. It depends on how you look at it. That's not an answer. She smiled faintly. It's the only one I have. Another cough racked her body, leaving her gasping. Panic surged through him. That's it. We're going to the hospital now. She shook her head weakly. If I leave here like that, you'll think this was about saving me. And it's not. It's about you choosing to live, she said. Really live. He turned back to her, anguish etched across his face. I don't know how. She reached out, her fingers brushing his sleeve. The touch was light, almost unreal. You start small, she said. You open the door. You let someone in. You stop telling yourself that staying frozen is the same as being loyal. He dropped back into the chair, covering his mouth with his hand. The truth of her words cut deeper than he expected. Do you know what he wanted to do after the ocean? She asked. He shook his head slowly. He wanted to come back, she said. He wanted to build something with you. Bigger than the garage. A place where people didn't just fix cars, but learned how to fix themselves. The mechanic let out a broken laugh. That sounds like him. Always dreaming. Dreams don't die when people do, she said. They just wait. Her eyes fluttered again, staying closed longer this time. He leaned forward, fear tightening his chest. Hey, he whispered. Don't go to sleep. I'm not going, she murmured. I'm just resting. He watched her face, memorizing every detail. the curve of her lashes, the faint shadow beneath her eyes. Something in him shifted, a quiet, painful tenderness opening where there had only been numbness before. If you could tell him one thing, she said suddenly, eyes still closed, what would it be?
The question caught him off guard. He swallowed hard.
I'd tell him I'm sorry, he said.
For the argument. For not stopping him. For everything.
She opened her eyes, looking straight at him. He already knows that.
His voice cracked. Then I'd tell him I miss him. Every day.
A single tear slid from the corner of her eye, tracing a slow path down her temple. He knows that too. The room felt heavy with unspoken words, with the weight of years compressed into this fragile moment.
I'm scared, he admitted quietly.
If I let go of the guilt, it's like letting go of him. She shook her head, her movements slow.
No, she said.
It's like making room for him to walk beside you instead of behind you. Her breathing grew softer, more shallow. He reached for her hand and held it, surprised by how warm it felt now. Promise me one more thing, she whispered. Anything. When you wake up tomorrow, she said, don't go straight to work.
Go outside. Look at the sky.
Breathe like someone who plans to be here a while. He nodded, tears slipping free. I will. She smiled then, small, peaceful, unlike any smile he had seen on her before.
Good, she said.
That means you're ready. For what? He asked, dread creeping into his voice.
She didn't answer right away.
Instead, her gaze drifted past him, toward the door, toward the stairs, toward something only she could see. For the part where the story doesn't hurt as much, she murmured. Her grip on his hand loosened slightly, though she was still holding on, and in that fragile space between breaths, the mechanic felt the room change again, as if the walls themselves were waiting for whatever came next. The mechanic squeezed her hand gently, afraid that even the smallest pressure might make her slip away. The room felt suspended in time, as though the air itself was holding its breath. He listened closely, counting the seconds between each rise of her chest, each fragile moment she chose to stay. You're still here, he whispered, more to reassure himself than her. She nodded faintly, eyes half-lidded. So are you, she said. That's new. He almost smiled at that, but the fear was still too close, too sharp. You talk like you know me better than I know myself.
I know the parts you stopped listening to, she replied.
Outside, the light shifted again, late afternoon slipping quietly toward evening. Shadows stretched across the floor, brushing the edges of the scattered tools like long fingers reaching in. The mechanic became suddenly aware of how quiet the garage below must be, how unusual it was for him to be away from the sounds that usually defined his day. I used to think silence was punishment, he said, surprising himself by speaking aloud. Now I think I was hiding in it.
She opened her eyes a little wider. Hiding can feel safe, she said.
Until it starts to feel like disappearing.
He exhaled slowly.
I didn't notice it happening. One day turned into 10 years. That's how it works, she murmured. Grief doesn't rush. It waits until you're tired enough to mistake stillness for peace. Her fingers twitched in his, and he adjusted his grip, careful and deliberate. You shouldn't be comforting me, he said quietly. You're the one who's sick. She gave a weak, knowing smile. Sometimes the sick ones are the only ones who can say it out loud. Another wave of coughing seized her, stronger than before. He leaned closer, his heart pounding, ready to call for help despite everything she had said. When it passed, her breathing was thin, uneven. Listen to me, she said urgently, her voice barely steady. If someone comes looking for me. Yes, he said quickly.
Tell them you carried me, she said.
Tell them you didn't turn away.
His brow furrowed.
Who would come looking for you?
She didn't answer.
Instead, her gaze drifted again, lingering on the photograph on the wall.
You should move that, she said softly. The photo, he asked. She nodded. Not because it hurts.
Because it deserves a place where the light reaches it.
Something in her tone made his chest ache.
He glanced at the picture again, noticing for the first time how the frame had been slowly fading in the shadow, how dust had gathered along its edges. I'll move it, he promised.
Good, she whispered.
Little changes matter more than you think. Her eyes closed again, and for a moment he thought she had fallen asleep. Panic rose in him, sharp and immediate. Hey, he said, brushing her hair back gently. Stay with me.
I am, she said, eyes still closed.
I'm just remembering.
Remembering what? What it feels like to be carried, she replied. Not just in your arms. In someone's choice. His throat tightened.
He had carried engines, transmissions, entire lifetimes of broken machinery, yet this small, fragile weight felt heavier than all of it combined.
I was so angry, he confessed suddenly. After he died. At him. At myself. At the world. I didn't know where to put it. And you put it everywhere, she said softly. In your work. In your silence.
In the way you stopped answering invitations.
He looked down.
I didn't want pity.
People don't always offer pity, she replied.
Sometimes they offer company. He considered that, the missed dinners, the unanswered calls, the slow shrinking of his world. I forgot how to let people sit beside me, he admitted. Her lips curved faintly. You're remembering now. The light in the room dimmed as the sun slipped lower. The mechanic reached over and switched on the lamp beside the sofa. Warm light filled the space, softening the edges of everything. She opened her eyes again, blinking at the glow. That's better, she said. I don't like the dark.
Neither do I, he thought, but didn't say it aloud.
Do you think people can change? He asked after a moment, even after they've wasted so much time.
She studied him carefully.
Time spent surviving isn't wasted, she said. But yes,
change doesn't care how late it arrives.
It only cares that you open the door. A sound drifted up from below, the faint clatter of metal, as if something had shifted in the garage.
The mechanic froze. You hear that? He asked. She nodded.
Someone's there.
His heart began to race. No one should be.
I closed early. Her grip on his hand tightened just slightly. Then maybe it's someone who needed the door open. He stood slowly, torn between staying with her and checking the noise.
I won't be long, he said.
I promise. She looked up at him, eyes clear despite the exhaustion etched into her face.
You don't have to choose anymore, she said.
You can come back. He hesitated, then nodded. As he moved toward the door, he paused, glancing back at her one more time. She was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite name. Hope, maybe, or relief. Or something that felt like farewell, though she hadn't said the word. I'll be right there, he said again, more firmly this time, and stepped toward the stairs, unaware that whatever waited below was already changing the shape of a night. The mechanic descended the stairs slowly, each step echoing with a weight he could not name. The garage lights flickered, then steadied, revealing an unexpected sight. A small crowd had gathered near the open door. A woman clutched her coat, eyes red from crying. A man stood beside her, wringing his hands. And between them, a young boy held a crumpled piece of paper, looking up with a hope too fragile to trust. We were looking for her, the woman said when she saw him. Have you seen a little girl?
She's sick.
She wandered off.
The mechanic's heart thudded. He remembered the girl's words. Tell them you carried me. He nodded, voice steady despite the tremor inside him. She's upstairs.
Resting. Relief broke across their faces like sunlight after rain. The woman pressed a hand to her mouth and sobbed once, sharp and quiet.
Thank you, she whispered.
She's been fading. They followed him up the stairs, the woman's footsteps urgent, the man's careful, reverent. The mechanic pushed open the apartment door, already speaking her name, already reaching.
The sofa was empty.
The blanket lay neatly folded, as if someone had taken care to leave no mess.
The lamp glowed warmly.
The photograph on the wall caught the light just right, dusk gone from the frame. The air felt lighter, almost luminous, as though something heavy had been lifted from the room.
The woman staggered forward.
She was just here, the mechanic said, bewildered.
She was resting. The boy pointed to the sofa cushion. Her necklace, he said.
There it was, a small, simple chain with a charm worn smooth by touch. The woman sank to her knees and gathered it to her chest, tears spilling freely now, not of fear, but of recognition. She always leaves it behind, the man murmured, voice thick. She says it means she found what she came for.
The mechanic's breath caught.
Found what? The woman looked up at him, eyes shining with grief and gratitude woven together. Someone willing to carry the truth, she said. Someone ready to move again. They left quietly, the boy glancing back once, offering a small, solemn nod that felt like a promise. When the door closed behind them, the mechanic stood alone in the apartment, the silence no longer punishing, but kind. He sank into the chair and laughed, softly at first, then with a release that surprised him, a sound edged with tears and relief. He pressed his palms to his face, breathing like someone who planned to be here a while. The next morning, he did not go straight to work. He stepped outside instead, just as she had asked. The sky was wide and pale, the air cool and honest. He breathed deeply, filling his lungs with something like courage. When he opened the garage door, he opened it all the way. By noon, a boy wandered in, curious and cautious. Then another. Then a woman brought coffee and asked if he could show her son how to change a tire. The mechanic rolled up his sleeves, hands steady, heart open. He taught patiently, laughed easily. And when he told stories, he spoke of the ocean without bitterness, of dreams without regret. Weeks passed. The photograph moved to a place of light. The apartment filled with voices. The garage became a classroom, then a community, then something larger than he had ever imagined. And sometimes, when the stairs creaked just so, or the air cooled unexpectedly, he would pause, smiling to himself, remembering the weight he had carried and the weight he had finally set down. On a quiet evening, long after the tools were put away and the last laugh faded, he sat alone and understood the secret at last. Forgiveness had not erased the past. It had made room for it to walk beside him, no longer a burden, but a guide. And somewhere beyond the reach of clocks and calendars, a little girl rested, knowing the truth had landed where it was needed most, carried carefully, up the stairs, into a life that had learned how to begin again.